Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you how to load film into a 35mm film camera. What you're going to need to follow along with this video is just your choice of 35mm film. I've got a roll of Fujicolor Superia here. This is a roll that's been sitting around for a while and that I know is damaged, so I'm just going to be using it for instructional purposes. You can use any roll of 35mm film that you want though. So that's the first thing that you need. I'm going to set that to the side for right now. And then the second thing that you're going to need is a 35mm camera. I'm going to be using a Pentax KM 35mm camera. This is a single lens reflex or SLR style 35mm camera, very common type of 35mm camera. You don't need to have the specific make and model to follow along with this video. This video and the steps that I go through are really going to apply to any 35mm single lens reflex camera. There might be some slight differences here and there, but overall, any 35mm SLR that you use, you can follow along with this video and the steps are still going to apply. So to start the video, just for folks that aren't familiar with 35mm cameras, especially of this body type and style and a single lens reflex camera, I am going to go through just a brief overview of what all the buttons and dials on this camera do and are used for. If you want to skip straight to the part where I'm loading the film and show you how to do that, you can go ahead and do that. I'll put the timestamp in the description below, and you can skip to that specific chapter on the video. But I am going to kick it off just with a brief overview of what the buttons and dials on this camera do, just so that you're a little bit more familiar with the camera itself. One other thing that I'll mention before I get started is that all the information in this video that I compiled and sort of run through can be found on Google. There's a lot of great resources out there. The site that I use specifically is buckus.org. I'll put a link in the description below, and then just an image off to the side with an example. But buckus.org, the gentleman who runs it, has digitized a large amount of film camera manuals that you can access for free. Most of them are just PDFs on his website. He accepts donations. It's very well organized, but you can find specifically for the Pentax KM and likely the SLR camera that you choose to use and follow along with in this video, you'll likely be able to find the manual there. So like I said, if you want to skip straight to me loading the camera, go ahead and do so. But I'll go ahead and kick us off just with an overview of the buttons on this camera and what everything does. All right, so I'm going to start with an overview of the buttons and dials on top of the camera, and I'm going to work from the left and go to the right. So starting on the far left, the first thing that I'm going to cover is this large dial here. So this is what's referred to as the film reminder dial. And what you'll see is at the top, we've got the word film written, and then at the bottom we've got EX written, which stands for exposure. And just looking at the top, you'll see there's two orange sun symbols. There's a black and white rectangle symbol twice. And then there's also a green light bulb symbol twice. And then if we look at the bottom, there's a 20 in the exposure count, 36, 20, 36, 20, and another 36. So this film reminder dial is basically just a way for the user of the camera to know what film they have installed within the camera without actually popping the back of the camera open and potentially exposing film to light inadvertently. So this doesn't change any of the internal settings within the camera. This is purely just a dial for you, the user, to use as a reminder for if you go out and shoot film one day, set your camera down, say you only finish half the roll and don't pick up your camera again until a month later, you may forget what film you have installed. So using this film reminder dial will help you remember that. And one other thing I wanted to point out, which skipping ahead a little bit, is this ASA symbol and marker over here. So ASA, that's an old word basically for what's now known as ISO or ISO. You can change this. You'll see it's set to 800 right now, but if I pull out and then twist, I can change that to reflect whatever film I have, which I showed you earlier. What I'm going to be using is a ISO 100 speed film, so I'm going to set that to 100. But the reason I skipped ahead and showed you that is that using that window and then these two windows on the film reminder dial, I can know without having to open my camera exactly what type of film I have installed. So the film I showed you is the ISO 100 Fujicolor Superia film. So if I were to put this in my camera, what I'd want to set this film reminder dial to is the sun symbol just to represent, regular daylight color negative film, and I'd rotate it to where the bottom is 20 exposures. You might have caught that this technically has 24 exposures on this roll. This camera has only got a 20 or 36 setting, so I'm just going to use 20, close enough to 24. And then as I showed you, I set the ISO or ASA window to 100. So I know without having even open my camera that I've got ISO 100 film, 20 exposures, actually 24, and then color film installed. And I can do that without having to pop open the back of the camera, which is convenient. So again, none of that changes the settings of the camera. It's just a reminder for you, the shooter, to know. The only other item to cover over here is we've got this film rewind knob that spins, and then there's also a lever that flips out that spins that we'll cover later to collect the film. So that covers the left sort of buttons and knobs here. In the middle top of the camera, we've got a hot shoe with a flash connection for an external flash. If you're using a flash unit, I am not. The ASA or ISO window that I showed earlier sits on top of the shutter speed knob. So this knob rotates, and at the very fastest shutter speed, we have 1/1000 seconds. And then the slowest shutter speed we have available is 1/1 second, so just a second shutter speed is the slowest we have, and you just rotate that to whichever one you want to set it to. There's this little film or a shutter speed indicator triangle here, so it's pointing at 125 now, so I know my shutter speed is 1/125. There's also a bulb setting, so if you need slower than a second shutter speed, you can use the bulb setting. And that way the shutter will stay open for as long as you have the shutter button depressed. Only other items to cover up here, if we keep moving to the right, is our shutter release button. So that's our button right here, which presses in and out. Right next to that, there is a shutter indicator window. That window will tell you if the shutter is cocked or not. So right now the shutter is not cocked. I can press this button as many times as I want and nothing happens. But if I take my film lever right here, my film advance lever, which will move the film inside the camera if I had it installed to the next frame, if I move that, you'll see the shutter indicator is now red, which indicates the shutter is cocked and ready to fire. So if I press the shutter button, probably heard it there, the shutter fired, goes clear again. Now it's red after I cock it, clear, red, clear, and so on and so forth. And as I do that and advance the film forward, you'll see that this window over here off to the right also increases, and that just tells you which frame you are on. So it'll go all the way up to 36. I'm not going to be using a 36 count frame roll. As I showed you, it's only 24. But just that indicator window will tell you which frame you're on and how much film you have left. So that's the top of the camera buttons. I'm going to flip it over to the bottom. Just starting on the left, we've got a battery compartment here. I do not have a battery installed, but if you want to use the built-in light meter, which would be visible if you looked through this viewfinder, you need a battery installed. I don't use the light meter that's built into the camera. I just use general exposure rules like the Sunny 16 rule. But if you want to use it just as a quick way to check exposure, you need to install the battery here. Directly to the right of that, this is just a standard tripod attachment mount. And then the last button here off to the right is the film rewind button. So you'd press that in, and you've got to press it in before you rewind the film, but I'll cover that later when we're actually rewinding film. So that's the bottom of the camera. If we move to the front of the camera, just starting at the top left, there's this black button here. This is a depth of field preview button. You'd use this during focusing. I'm not going to cover that today, but it's called the depth of field preview button. Directly below that, there is a self-timer lever. So if I was alone and had my camera set up on a tripod, nobody around to take my picture, I could use this self-timer, and what it'll do is count down, and basically I can set the camera down, turn the self-timer on, go get into position, and then it would automatically fire the shutter for me and take a picture. So convenient if you're shooting out on your own and want to take a picture yourself. In the middle here, so this is the lens mount. As you'll see, I've got a lens cap on. I don't have a lens actually installed. Just wanted to keep things sort of compact for this video. So if I take that cap off though, you can see inside the camera. You'll see the mirror. As I mentioned, this is referred to as an SLR or single lens reflex camera. So if I had a lens installed, the light would pass through the lens, hit this mirror, That mirror would reflect the light up into this prism up top, and then that light would then be reflected again out the eyepiece on the back to your eye. So just a single lens reflex 35mm camera. Gonna put that cap back on. And then the last thing we have here, this is another flash connection. I'm not using a flash. I haven't used this before, but if you're using a flash, this is a connection point that you could use as well. So moving to the back of the camera, only thing on the exterior to cover is the viewfinder, which we talked about. You'd look through that to compose your image. The rest of what I'll show you is actually inside the camera. So to get inside the camera, I can't pop the back open right now, but if I flip my film lever over from the top and then actually pull up on that, you'll see this column or shaft is revealed. I still can't pop open the back of the camera. This is spring-loaded though, so if I, again, pull out on it or pull up, it'll pop the camera back open. And now we've got the back of the camera open, and I'll run through some of the components inside the back of the camera here. So again, just going quickly from the left to the right, this is the film canister chamber over here on the left. So once we take our film later, we'll put it in that chamber. The film itself will stretch across the back. What the film will stretch across here is we've got the shutter curtain. So that's what this black sort of rectangle is here. These four metal bars, these are just film guides, so the film will advance across these bars, shutter will open, expose the film to light, that'll be your picture. You'd move the film advance lever, that'll rotate this shaft here that has these sprockets on them, and as you'll see, those sprockets sort of perfectly align with the holes on the film, which just help move it forward. And then the take-up spool on the far right here is sort of where your film will collect as you progress through the film roll, which, again, I'll cover all that in more detail once we actually load the camera and you'll see things moving. But that's the basic internals there, and then the only thing that I wanted to call out on the right here is that there's this pressure plate. You'll see if I go to close the camera, this pressure plate right here would actually perfectly align with the film window, and it's just intended to give the film itself just constant light pressure just to keep it flat so that when the shutter opens, the film itself is flat and you don't get a warped image. So that's sort of the basics just of the Pentax KM camera specifically, but like I was saying, all that buttonology and dial labels for the most part applies to other SLR film cameras as well. But I'm going to jump into next how to actually load this camera. All right, so I shifted to a little bit of a wider angle, but now that we've gone through all the buttons and dials, we're ready to load our camera. So the first thing that we're going to do is we want to make sure if we're taking our camera out of storage and haven't shot with it for a while, we want to make sure there's no film actually installed in here, because the last thing you want to do is pop open the back of the film camera, realize there's film installed, and then you potentially ruin some images by exposing the film to light. So to do that, we're just going to flip our film rewind lever over. And once it's flipped over, just go ahead and give it a clockwise rotation. And as you can see, it's spinning very freely for me, no resistance whatsoever. That's a good indicator that there's no film in this camera and that it's going to be safe to open the camera back. So once we've got that confirmed, the next thing we want to do before we forget is just take a look at the film we're going to be using. I'm going to be using a just color negative film. This is ISO 100 and it has 24 frames available. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set my film reminder dial to daylight, daylight negative film, 20 exposures. As I showed before, the only options are 36 or 20. So 20 is close enough to 24. And then I want to make sure my ASA or ISO setting is already set to 100, which it is. So now I know, just reminder-wise, for if I put this film in, put the camera away, I know I've got daylight negative film in here, daylight color negative film. It's got 20 exposures, technically 24 of them, and it's ISO 100. So now that I've got that set, we'll go ahead and pop the camera back open. So I'm going to flip that lever again. I'm going to pull up on the knob there, and then once the knob is pulled up, can't open the back yet. It's spring-loaded, so just pull or push up a little bit more and the back will pop open like such. So now that we've got the back open, I'll go ahead and take my film canister, Gonna have to flip it upside down because that's the way it fits in. And once it's upside down, it should easily slide in there, and I can press the film knob back down, flip my lever down, and now the film canister is locked in place. You know, I can rotate it around, but if I try to pull it out, it's locked in because that shaft is holding it in place. So once that's in place, what I'm gonna wanna do is take a look at my film collection spool over here, or the take-up spool. You'll see there are a bunch of vertical indentures and lines on it. So what I'm gonna wanna do is just, I'm gonna get that in place so that when I take my film leader here, you can go ahead and lightly pull it across. What I'll do is tuck the end of that film leader into one of those slots like so. And once that's done, there's this little sort of dial off to the bottom here. I can twist that a little bit just to put a little bit of tension on the film itself so that it stays in place. And now that that's in place, you can see the sprocket is perfectly lined up with the holes there. I'll show sort of advancing the film with it open later, but for now I'm going to close the film back. Our pressure plate is going to press up nicely against the film back there. Close it, it'll click into place. And once it's clicked into place, what I can do is go ahead and flip the camera over. We're going to take a look. We're less than 0 right now, negative numbers. Shutter is cocked, ready to fire, so I'm going to hit the shutter release, advance the film, hit the shutter release, advance the film. You'll see the indicator is now at 0. Hit the shutter release one more time, advance the film, and now I'm on my first frame, ready to shoot. Shutter indicator is red, meaning the shutter is ready to fire. So if I had a lens on here, I'd go out, take a picture of my subject, hitting the release button. You know, I'd have my shutter speed set to whatever I want it set to based on the conditions. And yeah, you just go through, take photos, keep going. And if I kept advancing, eventually, you know, this would get up to 24. And I know that's how many exposures I have. So let's just pretend this is up to 24. I'm at the end of my roll. When that happens, this film lever, you know, it moves easily right now, but once you get to the end, you're not going to be able to twist that lever all the way. There's going to be strong resistance, so that's just another sort of physical indicator that you're at the end of the roll. But let's just pretend I'm at the end now. And if I was at the end, what I would want to do is all of our film has been taken out of the canister, has moved across, and is now on the take-up spool. So what we need to do is rewind that film back into the canister so that we can take the canister out, and then we'll get it shipped off for development. To do that, the first thing that I'm going to do is flip the lever on top here, flip it open, and then we're going to flip the camera over, and we're going to just press in the film rewind button. So press that in, you'll see it's depressed. And now that it's depressed, what it's going to allow me to do is easily, and you'll feel a little bit of resistance, but as you twist here in a clockwise direction, you'll feel the film coming off the take-up spool and being spooled back into the canister that you're cranking. So I'm going to keep doing that just slowly, and eventually you'll feel the resistance go away, which I just felt. And what I can do is, again, just pop open the back of the camera, and you'll see that the film has been taken up into the film canister, and I'll pull that out. I'm just going to set the camera down. You'll see the film has been taken up into the film canister. Mine still has a little sticking out, which I'm going to pull out because I'm just going to show you one more thing. But in normal circumstances, you'd rewind it all the way. It'd be in your film canister and protected from light, and you'd ship it off to get it developed. But I'm just going to put this back in the camera one more time just to show you with the camera back open what it looks like as you're advancing the film through. So I'm just taking the same steps I did earlier. I'm going to stick that film into the collection or take-up spool, tighten it up there, and you'll see sort of as we progress through the film, it's coming out of our canister on the left, moving across the window here. So as I cock the film, the shutter curtain behind here is opening, exposing the film to light from what's coming in through the lens, and then we're advancing it, and it's collecting on the collection spool over here to the right. And I'll just go ahead and do the whole thing just to show you that, you know, the collection spool is going to start to fill up. 24 shots to get through. So if we just keep going, rapid fire, we'll eventually get to the point where there is no film left in the canister on the left, which we're almost there. Keep going. A little bit more. And we just got there. See, I can't, shutters, can't do anything, can't pull the lever forward anymore. All of our film's over here. And what I did when I pressed the take up or film rewind button is just allowed it to where instead of the film going into the take up spool, if I flip our lever back over up top here, we can easily recollect that film back in the canister at the end of the roll. I'm just going to keep going. Almost there. And there we go. And that's how you do it. And at that point, I'd pop my film out, close the camera back up, and that would be it. I'd have my completed roll here with 24 shots on it, and I'd send this off to get it developed. But thanks everyone for watching. That was just a intro as to how to load a 35mm film camera. Hope it was helpful to you. If it was, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe below, and I'll be sure to make some more videos in the future. Thanks everyone.